There are many events that led up to the cause of the American Revolution. In 1764, Parliament passed the Sugar Act. This law placed a tax on sugar, molasses, and other products that were shipped to the colonies. This was also strict enforcement for the people who tried to smuggle in goods. The colonial merchants who would often trade for smuggled goods didn't react in a good way. They were angry. A man named James Otis said that the Parliament couldn't tax the colonists because they had no right, but not everyone was on his side. British finance George Grenville disagreed. He actually enjoyed the protections of its laws, so because of that, they were subject to taxation. However, we're not quite done yet. The Sugar Act was just the beginning in the series of acts that made the tension between the mother country and the colonies. In 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act. This was saying that all legal and commercial documents had to carry an official stamp showing that a tax has been paid on them. The Stamp Act was something new for the colonists. The Stamp Act made the colonists pay the stamp for stamps and silver coins. Since the colonists didn't have a voice, the colonial leaders stood up and protested. Then Samuel Adams questioned the Stamp Act. He thought that if they could pass the Stamp Act, couldn't they just add more taxes? So then colonial assemblies and newspapers came up with the saying, no taxation without representation. After the protests, colonial merchants started a boycott of British goods, and then colonists formed secret groups to oppose British policies. These groups were called the Sons of Liberty. Many of them were mostly affected by the Stamp Act. The Sons of Liberty also stood up and protested. Finally, in 1766, Parliament saw that the Stamp Act was a mistake and had stopped it. But wait, that wasn't it. Around the same time, Parliament passed another law which was the Declaratory Act. This act said that the Parliament had supreme authority to govern the colonies. The Americans celebrated about not having the Stamp Act, but even though they had the Declaratory Act, they just didn't pay any mind. In the fall of 1768, about 1,000 British soldiers had arrived in Boston. As they arrived, tension already started filling up the streets of Boston. The British soldiers, and often young youths on the streets, would often yell rude insults at each other. The youths would say lobsters for sale. They would say that to refer towards the soldiers' red coats. At last, on March 5th, 1770, the tension between soldiers and youths exploded into violence. It all started with words and ended with some gunshots. A fight broke out and cripples attacks and foreign laborers were killed. This all happened right in front of the Custom House. The Sons of Liberty called this shooting the Boston Massacre. On the same day the Boston Massacre incident happened, the colonists didn't know that the Parliament proposed the Repeal of Townshend Act. The colonial boycott had been helpful, but on the other hand, the British trade had been hurt. The Parliament had still kept the Tea Act because they wanted to show that they had the right to tax the colonists. The Tea Act had gave the Britain East India Company control over the American trade. The tea would arrive in the colonies only in the trading companies shipped and would be sold by merchants. The colonists who had been paying taxes on smuggled goods had to now pay tax on this regulated tea. This angered colonial shippers and merchants. This colonists had wondered what would happen. What would the Parliament do next? Colonists protested against the Tea Act. Then one day, on the evening of December 16, 1773, a group of men with disguised as Native Americans boarded 3 tea ships, docked in the Boston Harbor, and poured tea in the ocean at night. They destroyed 342 tons of tea. Now they thought that Britain would see how strongly colonists opposed to taxation without representation. So, what led up to the American Revolution?